Hey, y'all, it's Andrew Hayes. Welcome to the Alliance. We just got done testing our tornado sirens down here in Lawton, Oklahoma. Uh, yeah, so I'll tell you, we moved some cattle towards the end of last week and started this week, and it's just all kinds of muddy and a mess. We had one calf. We got this group of cattle moved, but we had one calf that didn't come up. Newborn baby. We got him moved Friday, and this calf had been born Wednesday, and so the mama had tucked it away and hid it in the grass, and we didn't move it. We had to go back, hunt it down, find it, catch it, stick it in the half-ton truck, and in the front seat, my boy held it, and we hauled it to the next field, and uh, kind of a nice bull calf. You can never tell with a bull calf how it's going to turn out, or any calf. They all look cute when they're babies. But we stopped and put a tag in its ear, and we're gonna see. It's nice. Um, anyway, so I there's so much going on and so much controversy. Um, just different things. I've said this before. It's kind of the whole point of my show, I suppose, is that conservatism is not one monolithic, um, homogenous. Homogeneous. It's not homogenous. It's not one thing. That there's blends, different types of conservatism, and so I was in a chat, and I have a different uh, track of conservatism. Mine is an older, uh, and I don't mean to say like, oh, it's original, but I mean, my gosh, I'm looking back to John Lilburn and John Trenchard and Thomas Gordon, John Locke, um, and those thinkers to form my conservatism. And the the reality is maybe perhaps John Locke, but aside from him, you haven't heard these names. And uh, so anyway, but that's not really the point. I'm not. Yes, I'm trying to advance my brand of conservatism, I suppose, aren't we all? But uh, the bigger, broader picture is I just realized I don't have a clock in this truck. Bigger, broader picture is that uh, we should be able to communicate with each other effectively and not tear each other apart. That to disagree is is not to be divided. That's not the same thing. Um, and really, frankly, even if you say, okay, it all depends on how you package it and how you frame it. I've also said that to be divided isn't to be divided against ourselves. We can still be allies. uh, the U.S. isn't Britain and Britain isn't France, but they were allies against the enemy. And that's very much how I see conservatism. And so we're talking about the Constitution, and we're having an argument over the Constitution, and I guess it just got to be too much for some people. Um, and I'm just like, wow, we have issues. If we're not able to discuss the Constitution, if we can't argue that point, then amongst ourselves, how can we advance that idea to people on the left or even to people in the middle that are on the fence, these independents that don't have any kind of clear thinking at all? Um, and I was asked, well, why? One gentleman asked me, he said, well, why are you focused on the 5% that you disagree with other conservatives? Uh, why not focus on the 95% that we all agree on? And well, I do. I sit down with Marxists. I've sat down with, well, same guy, atheists. Um, sat down with Muslims. It's, there's absolutely, I have those discussions, and I feel like to reasonable success. Um, the thing though is that, and you talk to somebody, you debate somebody on the left about gun control, and at this point, I've had that debate, you know, several hundred times. Um, it's the same thing. I know what they're going to say. I know what I'm going to say. It's like I've rehearsed it, I've scripted it. It's smooth. I can have that debate without thinking. It's become mindless. It's like a mundane task at work that you just do, and you don't even think about it. Have you ever? I've done this. Have you ever left work and you get home and you really don't remember the drive because you were just on autopilot? Yeah, that's what it can be like. I mean, not always, but it can be like that because it's just so routine and so boring. But when you argue with another conservative, then you're talking to somebody who is presumably thoughtful, presumably well read, and maybe they've actually read something you haven't read, um, and that's actually worth reading. Not talking about Thomas Piketty or anything like that. Um, and it's a more interesting conversation. It's a more interesting conversation to have, and if you're talking to somebody who's intelligent and well read, I think there's a higher chance that you know I could be wrong on this 5%. Um, you're I'm I'm seeking the truth, and I guess the trouble comes in that I've heard all the arguments for socialism. There's not an argument I haven't heard, and I know all the facts for the free market. So um, it's just incredibly unlikely that somebody is going to come along with new data, new information, new arguments, and somehow convince me that socialism is superior to um, a free market society. Uh, that's just realistically, it's not going to happen. I'm always interested to hear new arguments, um, and for the sake of discussion, I'll listen to the old arguments again. Um, but it's just not going to happen. And I responded to the fellow and I said, look, you've got about as much of a chance as convincing me that I'm a horse. Uh, I just don't see how that happens. Um, so anyway, yeah, I think that the debate within conservatism on the 5% or 10% or what have you, I think that's much more engaging. It's much more interesting, and by the way, it's worth having because I think that there's a much higher uh, chance. There's a greater opportunity that I could be wrong on it. Um, but we, but in attempting to do that, I realize that so much of the conservative movement is a little bit light. I just it concerns me. The demographic trend has um, I don't know. There's different datas. The data they say that conservatism is growing. It's growing right now. The long-term projection, going back 50 years, is that the left is outgrowing us. They've they've poured across the border, um, and we might be able to remedy some of that. A lot of the damage, though, I think a lot of the damage is done. Honestly, point of what I'm getting at is that we need to be, and we should be, highly effective at communicating our ideas. And if we take a good hard look in the mirror, I would say we're not. Um, I've been at it a very long time, um, and you don't. I don't have a percentage. I don't know. I'd have to really sit down and think about it, and there's no way to know really of the influence that different conversations have had over people. I have had um, several people reach out to me um, over the years, a year or 18 months later, and find me on Facebook, and they have changed their views, um, and now arguably somehow they're more right wing than I am, or more conservative than I am in certain ways. Um, but nevertheless, like it's a hard thing to do. Um, so right here, that's kind of the first point of it, is that you can't change anyone's mind. All you can do is cause them to think. If you can engage them and stir inside them some curiosity, um, that's the win. That's the win right there. You've won. If you can cause them to be hungry for the truth, then um, then that's the win, and they'll get it. Not right away. And that's that's another point, is that it's a long process. It's slow. I've never had an argument with somebody, and I've had thousands and thousands of conversations and arguments and different interactions, and never one time have I made the argument and the other person just comes back and says, "Wow, I never thought about it like that. I must be wrong. You're right." You know, that's just totally unrealistic. That's not what happens. Um, and one thing that I've kind of realized very recently is the power of friendship and likability, and this is where I'm probably uh, not the one to tell you the details of how to achieve that, but I've watched, and I can see that it makes a difference. If uh, you just make a casual point to a friend, and this is also, it ties into another point, is you know don't try to get them to drink from a garden hose. Again, I think we all struggle with that one. Um, but you make a casual point, non-confrontational, and just make a point, and the other guy's like, "Yeah, that makes sense." You know, and then the emotion, um, which ties into that likability and friendship, is that, well, and let me touch on that a little bit more. If somebody likes you, they're just more likely to agree with you. If they don't like you, um, then you can be right all day long, up and down, uh, but because they don't like you, they're just going to find a reason to disagree. So what's the point? Uh, and I'll jump way down to the bottom of my notes, and just say that if it's if it's in public, if there's other people listening, it can be beneficial to have that discussion. And this is kind of the main theme online, is that when you're arguing on Facebook, you're not arguing necessarily to convince the person you're arguing with, but you're arguing for the sake of the other people in the group or the other people in the chat, um, the other people that will read it and that they'd be influenced. Um, which is to say that um, it's important to have humility and certainly stay away from logical fallacies and ad hominems. Um, those they turn off the person that you're talking to, but they also turn off the hearer, the third party that's listening or reading. Um, they know what it is, and I think I've talked about this a little bit before that you can win a fight fighting dirty, a physical fight fighting dirty, but long term you're not going to win arguments fighting dirty because they'll go home, they'll think about it, they'll say, oh, that was that was a cheap trick, that was a logical fallacy, and they'll reverse back, and they should because the bandwagon fallacy or um, just the naked appeal to authority, those are um, those aren't a good reason to hold a view. I'm not going to hold a view because simply because the experts hold that view. Um, the thought process is that the experts hold that view because it's true. Um, but sometimes the experts aren't as expert as we like to as they like to think they are. Um, do, 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 do. Yeah, and one thing that it's kind of a big deal, I think, is and I made this mistake a lot early on, and it is to pick who you talk to. Not everybody wants to engage, and that's I may have overcorrected. Um, that's why I don't share my own podcast as much as anybody else who has a podcast. I don't share my podcast out there on Facebook and share it around and everything. Um, I don't know, because the people that are interested will find it. Um, if like I don't know, that's the idea. I'll ask you if there's somebody that's interested in the kind of stuff that we talk about here. Um, by all means, share it. Please do. That's good. But you know, I don't know. I just don't feel like this is the Joe Rogan show that everybody and their dog is going to sit down and listen to me talk. Not everybody's interested in what we're talking about, so I don't know. I just try not to bother them. There's enough of us who are interested in this that we can talk about it, um, and it's you know I've got a producer and everything, and his camera's off, but um, my thought is quality over quantity. I would rather have 1,000 uh, strong patriots listening to me than 100,000 sheep. They might disagree. My producers might disagree, but that's how I feel about it. Um, I've got a couple more pages of material here, and I'm going to try and put it together and turn it into a course and like make it so it flows. But um, one thing that I'll say, and I'll kind of wrap this up, but know what it is that you're disagreeing on. Um, so much of the arguments and disagreements that people have is them arguing past one another. One person is making a utilitarian argument about what works best, and the other person is making an ethical argument about what's right. So you'll see this in a death penalty debate, where one person is arguing about how the death penalty doesn't deter crime. That's a utilitarian argument, and the other person is arguing about um, what justice demands, which is a ultimate ends argument. You have the means, you have the ends, and what are we talking about? Um, so that's where, and maybe not on this point. Maybe you disagree. Maybe the death penalty does deter crime. Um, I'm not sure that. I'm really not sure that that bears out. I think it's certainly not the way that the death penalty is dealt with in the United States, where what do we have? We had a criminal that committed a crime in 1995 or 96, and he was on death row for decades, and then I think finally the governor commuted his sentence. You know, okay, so is the death penalty really deterring anybody? Um, and that's where, you just have to concede um, the economic point. The economics is a science of means, so I refer to it as economic. Um, but yeah, you can concede that point and just but come back and argue the ultimate ends. Well, never mind if it doesn't deter crime. What is justice? Do we have a criminal justice system, or a what do we have? If it's not justice, then what is it? Do you want justice? Um, and so it's important. It's really important to know what we're talking about, and to meet the other person on their level, or uh, just ask them to switch. Say, hey, let's table that. Let's think about the ethical implications rather than the utilitarian um, ramifications, right? So just ask them to switch gears, and they will. Um, man, we got to read more. We got to read more. We need to, um, and this is why I say not everybody is able to be a debater, and I'm not trying to make a debate master out of everyone. Um, setting your emotion aside, having the time to master the material. Um, Not everybody has the time for that. Not everybody has the uh, personality type to be able to set their emotions aside, to suspend judgment. That's important. That's um, it's higher up in my notes, but I just didn't hit on it. Is being a true seeker, and I kind of talked about it where um, listening. Like, I'm hoping to hear new arguments. I'd like to hear new arguments. Not that I want to be a socialist. I don't, but I want truth, and there's no new arguments for socialism. I've heard all of them. I think it'd be interesting to hear a new argument. Um, Again, I think you'd have as good a chance of convincing me of socialism as you would convincing me I'm a horse or a dog or something. It's just not something that's realistic. But um, and that's what I mean. Again, like on that 5% where we disagree, on the right where conservatives disagree, like, you know what? There's a reasonable chance, like not huge, but you know 30, 40, 50% chance. Those are interesting discussions. Um, but in either case, it's being able to suspend to suspend your position on some level. Reach out and take a hold of the other idea and examine it, inspect it, like give it a good once over. Um, and as long as you're um, a partisan, we have a hard time doing this when confronted with heresies or or false religions. Uh, nobody wants to sit down and read the Quran because you already know it's not true. You know it's not true. Um, Again, it's the same idea. Got about as good of a chance at convincing somebody they're a bird as convincing a born again Christian that the Quran is right. Um, and that's one of the tricks is somehow on some level to be able to uh, suspend your position and look at the other argument. And again, the reason you do that is twofold. In the broader and more mundane issues, it's to seek truth. You're not going to find the truth in the Quran, so that's what makes it hard. Um, but on more mundane issues, political issues, do that. The other thing is that you're you're setting the example with whoever it is you're talking to that you're doing what you're asking them to do because you're asking them to suspend their belief and look at your beliefs, right? And if you can't lead by example and do that, they're not going to do it either. But if they see that you do that, then again, it's not in every uh, not everybody does it, but sometimes you'll find people that will do that, and those are always the people that ultimately come over if they can suspend uh, their thinking and pick up your thinking and deal with it. um, then those are the people that you'll win over. And and I'm going to skip through some of this, but just to kind of tie into what I just said, one thing I do, and Katie looked this over and she thought it was neat, and she pointed out, well, authors don't do this, and that is to not connect every dot. Um, you have those. I don't know if you're like me. I always do those connect dots where you connect the dots and you have the picture and everything. Um, it's been a long time since I did them. I haven't done one in a while, but if that's making the argument, then leave part of it undone. There's no need for you to say every last point in an argument. And again, this is one of the hard things, but I'm telling you, in a conversation, when you leave some of your points unsaid, um, and disengage, you know, um, then what they do when they walk away is they're going to think about it and they're going to connect the rest of the dots. And that's important. If you connect every point, then what is there left for them? What's left for them to think about except for why you're wrong? Uh, but if you leave some of your points unmade, then what's left for them to do is to connect those points, and then instead of you winning the argument, they've figured it out. Um, and yeah, authors don't do that. Um, but there's a different relationship between a an author and a reader versus you and a coworker, or you and somebody else. Just um, you pick up a book to learn from the author, um, whereas people engage in conversation usually not to learn from the other person. That's the reality. Um, but and that's, I don't know if I said it or not. It's on the notes. I've got to figure out how to put all this together and make it flow. Um, I thought I'd try it on you guys as a guinea pig. Um, but the humility, and again, all this stuff is hard. It's all hard for me. Um, And I'm not telling you that I've mastered it. Um, I think I figured it out, but figuring out how to do something and getting good at it aren't necessarily the same thing, right? So, um, anyway, I'm gonna wrap up and go tear down that corral, and we're gonna move panels and um, move some more cattle. So, hey, thank you guys. Like I said, share the video with somebody that you think is thoughtful and that you think would be interested. Um, Little short update. Bob Murphy was set to record with me this evening. He The situation is that he didn't double book, but he had engagements on both sides of my interview, and so he's like, yeah, I can do it, um, but it would be cool if we could push it back. And I'll tell you this, uh, man, if Bob Murphy thinks I'm cool, I'm going to do that. So we pushed it back, and Bob Murphy thinks I'm cool. So um, we'll get that recorded. It still might air on the 19th. I don't know. We haven't figured out a time yet. Um, yeah, that's next week. It might be next Monday. It might be the Monday after. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But hey, thank you for watching. And until then, we'll talk to you later. Bye.